All right, Indiana fans, look, I know you probably would have liked IU to beat Rutgers or to beat Arizona, but hey, through 10 games, Indiana is 8-2. There's a lot for us to talk about. We saw a lot of good from the Hoosiers on Saturday against the Wildcats, and we definitely saw some bad as well. But overall, Indiana is still very much in the top 16, whether you look at the AP poll or the Ken Palm ratings. So plenty for the Hoosiers to play for here between now and March Madness. We're going to dive into our thoughts after the Arizona game and preview IU's gigantic non-conference showdown at Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday, and so much more here on episode 276 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, where I'm your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens, our other co-host, Charlie Mason, dealing with some academic obligations. Matt, how are you? Look, crazy game Saturday. Indiana lost by 14, but there are so many more details within that scoreline. Rough start for the Hoosiers, bounce back, made it interesting, terrible officiating. The floor is open. What do you want to talk about from IU's loss in Vegas?
I think my main takeaway from that loss, by the way, Vegas was a ton of fun. It was basically Indiana West.
Amazing.
Um, no, I'm serious. Like walking down the strip, I mean, every other shirt was an IU shirt. Which, by the way, IU people, you don't need to always wear IU stuff everywhere you go, but like, I appreciated it. It was a fun time. However, it would have been more fun if IU had won the game because that's sort of important in all of this. But again, it was a good time to just be out there. It was nice to see a game, and then again, my biggest takeaway from the game, which I kind of went on a tangent and didn't talk about here yet, was that I was proud of the guys fighting back. They went down 19. We've seen this before. They could have very much rolled over. 2 years ago, I remember IU lost a game to Texas
Mm.
in the Maui Invitational in North Carolina. They lost by 30, right? They
Mm-hmm.
just rolled over. They kind of gave up. And so again, it's kind of like this team came back. They got within four a couple times.
Yeah.
Really just not knocking on the door. Couldn't get over the hump. Couldn't force it. Force Arizona into tough situations. Eventually lost by 14. It's fine. We're gonna lose games like this. In fact, I don't think IU will see a team of Arizona's caliber
No.
and Kansas's caliber when we play Kansas until the tournament. Okay, like you're not gonna see them at all. So, like we should, India's gonna learn a lot from these games, and they also learned a very important lesson was that this team is at 85% without Jalen Hood-Schifino. He is that important to this team. Um, he's the secondary playmaker when Xavier Johnson's on the floor. He's the primary ball handler. When it's crunch time, you need a bucket, you can give it to him, and he can create on his own. Like so important, and missing him for the Rutgers game and now the Arizona game clearly has shown that IU needs him back. Now we've been told that IU should not expect him back. Or we've been told through tea leaves we shouldn't expect him back
It's
for the Kansas
it's
game.
it's day to day, right?
It's
It's
day
day
to
to day.
day,
We
but they
just
say day to day. They can say day to day for a month, right? Like again, it's kind
well,
of like
Woodson did say they're taking their time with this, and it makes sense,
yeah,
right? You don't want to force something now that hurts Hood Shafino's chances of playing later in the season.
that's right. And again, like that makes sense to me. It just sucks you don't have him for probably the two biggest non-conference games, right? So especially since he probably won't be, in my opinion, won't be playing in Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday. So again, I'm excited from what I saw from the team. There's certain players I'll talk about in a bit that I was really excited for. There are certain players that I have serious questions for. We can dive into that like right now if you want to, Ethan. But
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, if Indiana's going to lose a few games, guys, let them lose these right now, right? We don't
Yeah.
want Indiana to peak in December. We want Indiana to peak in February and in March and potentially that first weekend in April. That's when we want IU to peak. And this is what great programs do. It's been a while since Indiana's been a great program, right? You go
Yeah.
out and you schedule tough teams and you play in those non-conference tournaments, or you schedule one-offs against Arizona and Kansas, and you take some lumps early on. It's exactly what you intended on doing, especially without Jalen Hood-Schifino. And you also had that road trip to Rutgers thrown in there. This was the
Mm-hmm.
whole point, all right? Compared this to last season or some of those non-conference schedules under Archie Miller or Tom Crean, where, let's just look at last year, right? Indiana, St. John's, Notre Dame, Syracuse, that told us nothing. We
Right.
learned nothing from those games. And so this is exactly the whole point. And I guess the moral of the story for Indiana is don't spot an elite team at 27-8 lead, right? I mean, that's kind of my main takeaway, because if Indiana is able to corral that game in the first 10, 12 minutes and keep the deficit to 6, 8, 10, 12 points instead of 19, that thing's coming down to the final whistle, right? And so
Yeah.
at the end of the day, Indiana showed a lot to me. They played in a high tempo, main event type of atmosphere. All the objective folks who watched this game, starting with Gus Johnson and Bill Raftery in the commentator booth, all the way to all your college basketball writers, all of them said Sweet 16, Elite Eight type basketball being played. And guess what, folks? It's the middle of December. Indiana just could not have afforded a 27-8 deficit early on. I am so excited to see Miller Kopp and Tamar Bates play like this. And I don't know how sustainable this is, but folks, we've seen Miller Kopp now put together 3 straight double-digit games against Power 5 high major opponents. And you are starting to see that, and you can really see it when you watch these games in person. Indiana is trying to identify those proper areas to get Miller Kopp the ball, to get him a shot at a three-pointer. Indiana needs some help as far as that perimeter shooting, as far as the math problems is concerned. And with Miller Kopp, and then you're seeing Tamar Bates emerge, and you're seeing Race Thompson hit that shot when it's in stride, when it's in the flow of the offense. That to me is what I'm grasping on here for Indiana going forward for the rest of the season. Matt, I don't know if you saw the same thing with Kopp and Bates, but if they can emerge as perimeter forces for Indiana, that's a really good sign for this team.
Yeah, I agree. My thing with the IU game was I agree with you. I came away very impressed from those two. More so Miller Kopp. Tamar Bates, like, yeah, I thought he had a very impressive offensive output in that game. He was a bit of a spark plug. He kind of helped on a couple of those runs where they clawed it back to 4 points. He
Was
was
a
the
rough
main.
start though for him. It was a rough start.
Not only was it a rough start, he's a defensive liability. And again, as much as I would love him to play offense, you've got to be a positive player. You got to be a net positive player. And right now, Tamar Bates is a net neutral, which is nice because that means you can play him. But I was expecting Tamar Bates, the 5-star recruit, the guy we saw at IMG, the dude that everybody is super excited about. I was expecting him to be more of a positive player, right? And so again, he can fix that though. And again, it's just attention to detail on defense. It's a lot of overhelping. It's a lot of
biting on pump fakes. I see that a
biting
lot.
on pump fakes. It's just overall attentiveness, right? And that's something that's fixable. It's not like he's slow. It's not that he doesn't have the athleticism to play defense. It's just he's not focusing on it. So again, he got 28 minutes this game. I thought he probably played good defense for like 5 of that, right? So again, it's
Hey,
tough,
we
but
just
it's
looking
tough.
for
It's tough
progress,
love.
right? Just
Yeah, we're
looking for
looking for
progress.
progress. And again, his offensive output was great. He wasn't hitting the three. Right? He shot 1 of 3 from 3.
Right.
It was mostly mid-range pull-ups. Stuff he was confident in shooting, and he looked confident in
Exactly.
playing and doing it. And as a player whose offensive comfortableness grows, right, he's gonna focus more on the defensive end naturally. So again, the more Tamar plays, hopefully the better he gets. Miller Kopp again was fantastic. I thought I was thinking today that they need to run more sets for Miller Kopp, with Xavier Johnson, Trey Jackson Davis in the pick and roll, and him sitting in the close corner, and his defender being the help defender, because then that forces defenses into a unwinnable task, which is that either you overhelp on Trace and you give one of Miller or Xavier the ball, or you overhelp Miller and you give Trace Jackson Davis a
Exactly.
one-on-one opportunity to back down his defender. Now,
Yeah.
in this game, we'll go back to who I was disappointed in. Trace and
Eh,
Race. Yeah, Race had a really good game shooting it from the outside. I
yeah.
get that. But they were completely, utterly dominated by Omar Ballo and Tubelis. Like,
Yep.
again, they're going to be the best front court that Indiana will play all year long. That said, they still got dominated. You can add, Larson's not really a big,
No.
but he's not exactly a shooter either. So he kind of got in and around the rim. Again, Arizona kind of got whatever they wanted in and around the rim
Yeah.
in the mid range. And there's not really much that either Trace nor Race could do on the defensive end. And then on the offensive end, they were just completely and utterly dominated. They couldn't get a rebound. Trace looked small. Thompson looked scared. When he wasn't shooting the 3-pointer, he looked scared from shooting it from two or whether it was a hook shot or whatever. They were just afraid to get blocked, which I don't want my two best players to look scared in a game, right? And so at the end of the day, I'm disappointed in them. They didn't play their best game. There was stretches in which you needed somebody like Trace to step up and get the ball. He didn't really demand the ball, nor could he get open, nor could the guys find him, and nor when he got the ball could he do anything with it.
Yeah.
He's just playing honestly scared. So, at the end of the day, it's not good when Trace has 10 field goal attempts and has 11 points, and then your two leading field, bucket takers, right? Like your
Hmm.
shot takers
Hmm.
are Race Thompson and Xavier Johnson, who both shoot a combined like 25-30% from the floor. So
Yeah.
that's not great. That's not a recipe for success. Like this is one of those games where you need to be running more sets for Miller Kopp, right? Because he's hitting.
Yeah.
You need to be running more sets for Mar Bates because he was also hitting, right? You got to run more sets with these guys in order to open up space for somebody like Trace, and they didn't do that. They started down the stretch to try force feeding it to him, and it just really didn't work. He was never really comfortable. He was completely and utterly played out of the game, and in fact, he fouled out. So again, Indiana is 8-0 this year when Trace doesn't foul out, and 0-2 when he does. Coincidence? I think not.
No, not at all. And it makes all the sense in the world. Also interesting that those are the first two games that Trace Jackson Davis has fouled out in his career. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but once again, Indiana got the very short end of the officials' whistle on Saturday night. I'm not sure what the Hoosiers have to do. I don't know if Mike Woodson needs to get a technical or what the heck is going on. Of course, the one play that everyone vividly remembers is the missed goaltend where that thing was well on its way down, and then
Yeah.
Ballo just snatched it out of the air, and referees were daydreaming. I'm not really sure what they were looking at. And at that point in the game, it would have cut the deficit down to 5 or 6 points. Who knows what happens? Instead, play on. Arizona quickly went on a spurt, customary spurt of theirs, and went up 12 points, and that kind of sealed the deal late in the second half there. Yeah, it's an interesting point you made as far as the two top shot takers for Indiana were Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson, and they combined 9 for 27 from the field. So, yes, we did see Race Thompson hit some threes, but overall, Indiana's got to make their shots, and that takes us to something that we saw come across social media earlier today, which is Indiana's taking good shots by and large, but unfortunately, they're not falling. And Jalen Hood-Schifino's return could potentially help that. But Matt, as far as I'm concerned, right, this is an Indiana team that you're creating good offense. What's that last step that IU needs to take in order to nail these jump shots time and time again? obviously you can't make a midseason trade. So is there something mechanically that Indiana shooters are doing wrong? It's a matter of, hey, do what you're doing over the course of a 30-game sample, and you'll see the percentages where they need to be.
Just keep shooting it. Again, I talked to Ann about this on the other podcast on Big Ten Coast to Coast. Like, what do you do when you're in a shooting slump? What do you do when the shots aren't falling? He's like, as a shooter, you just keep shooting the ball, right? Like, it'll eventually go in. You're hitting it in practice. If you're hitting it, you know, in shoot arounds, if you're hitting it in, just getting shots up, right? After practice, like personal training, you're going to hit it eventually. So just keep hitting it, or just keep trying to hit it, right? Just keep shooting. You're going to eventually get it.
There you go. That's the moral of the story. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this Indiana offense with Jalen Hood-Schifino back. Whether it's the Kansas game, whether it's the 2 non-conference games before the Big Ten starts in full pitch and fever pitch in January with that road trip to Iowa. Not sure exactly when Hood-Schifino will come back, but Indiana's, elite 5-star true freshman point guard clearly gives this offense a different wrinkle, especially at the start of these games. It seems like against Rutgers, and against Arizona, Indiana started just a little apprehensively, not on their strongest foot forward. That was not the case against Nebraska. You saw the Hoosiers do a good job against the Huskers, a win that looked really impressive in the context of Nebraska beating Creighton before they played Indiana, and Nebraska losing in overtime to Purdue after playing Indiana. So it's not all doom and gloom for the Hoosiers. They're 8-2. They're top 16. I really liked the response. Bottom line, don't fall. Don't trail 27-8, and stop playing. And stop, really get after it. Play aggressive,
Well,
play bold, play inspired basketball, and that's what we're looking for, Indiana.
The Nebraska game's a bit of a fake, was a fool's gold. Like, yeah, we beat Nebraska, but we also beat them without their best player.
Well, we didn't have our starting point guard, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned,
Starting point guard. No, we didn't have our third best player. But like again, Sam Griesel is Nebraska, right? Okay,
Indiana also
he
crushed
is.
them. Right? Like I'm not I'm
Yeah.
not going to take that away from
No, no, no,
Indiana.
no, no, no,
Indiana
no, no.
routed the Huskers.
Indiana thoroughly destroyed them. However, it is a little bit closer of a game if Griesel plays. Also, I'm not sure Creighton's as good. Also, Purdue was playing in Nebraska. Very different story. But still, it is a good win. However, Indiana needs Jalen Hood-Schifino back desperately. Did we talk about that Nebraska game at all? We didn't, because that was
No,
that was
it,
done
it was
last
it
week.
was it was many
I
moons
mean,
ago, as far
yeah,
as
I mean,
I'm
I mean,
concerned.
I mean,
But
just
yeah, what stood out to you?
quickly
Go
touch
ahead.
of that.
Yeah,
Trey
yeah,
Galloway, Tamar Bates, they're both very, very like
excellent.
obviously you can look at the box score and it tells you that they were good, right? I thought Trace was fantastic. Again, he had a triple double, so we missed that. That was pretty dope. He my God, he had a stat pattern like 11 rebounds or 12 points, 11 rebounds, 10
But
assists,
this
three
is the
steals,
thing
three
with Trace
blocks.
Jackson Davis, right? Like when he gets his mojo going, he is practically unstoppable, right? Not only from his putting the ball in the basket, but the way he secures those boards and distributes to his teammates and blocks those shots. It's just in some of these games, you really look at Indiana's 2 losses this year, he just doesn't, he's just unable to unlock that level, that attitude, that swagger. And that's something, I'm looking forward to seeing Indiana pull out of him consistently here, regardless of who the opponent is, regardless of where the venue is of these games. Starting on Saturday against Kansas, get Jackson Davis going, because if he gets into a rhythm, it feels like it really spreads throughout the rest of the team.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And it's very clear that it does. It's very obvious. People that are even IU fans can tell that. My last thing about this week is that I think Xavier Johnson needs to be better. He's a much better
Mm.
player than how he's been performing. I think he had 4 points against Nebraska. It's fine. We ended up winning the game. It's okay. He was like 2 of 8. He was like 3 of 13 against Arizona for like 8 points. Like, this is a guy we need much more from, and we've seen him do more in the past. So again, like I'm sitting here kind of like waiting for that guy that's the art, supposedly
Yeah.
supposed to be our second or third best player to show up, and he hasn't shown up yet. And so again, it kind of sucks because I think this IU team could really pull off some like resume defining wins
Saturday.
here. And
Saturday.
if Saturday we have a chance, but if he plays anything like he did the last two games, then Indiana does not really have a chance at all. You need your primary ball handler, your senior guard, to go out there and play like a senior guard. He so far has not done that. He's been very inefficient. So again, be efficient, be calm, be cool, collected, play your game, and all things should be good. But it's kind of the end of the day, it's like, bro,
It's there, and that efficient player is there. We saw it at Xavier earlier this year, and let's make it clear, right? Xavier Johnson's first responsibility is to stay on the court, especially when you don't have Jalen Hood-Schifino. And that story played out on Saturday. Look, the shooting numbers are shaky, but when he was on the floor, Indiana was right in there with Nebraska and with Arizona on Saturday. He picks up a second foul, has to exit the game. Arizona goes on their run, and Mike Woodson's forced to bring him back in earlier than he would like. And even after Mike Woodson did that, Xavier Johnson played well and helped Indiana reel it in. He's got to stay on the court, and I don't think we can put that all on the officials. Xavier Johnson has to realize that his biggest responsibility for this team is to be able to play 30 minutes, play 32 minutes, stay on the floor. And if he's on the bench, especially when Indiana doesn't have Jalen Hood-Schifino, that same story will play out on Saturday. If Xavier Johnson picks up 2 fouls in the first 10 minutes, Indiana will lose against the Kansas Jayhawks. So that's exactly where this is as far as the Hoosiers are concerned. Again, no one's going to close the book on the season after a 14-point loss to Arizona, but the Wildcats were clearly better on Saturday. Indiana with a really rough start that really did them in over the grand scheme of things, although there were a lot of positive takeaways. Folks, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU Sports. Before we dive in to a little bit of a Kansas preview here and maybe ask a couple of questions as far as IU basketball is concerned. But the team that won the week this past week in IU Sports is the men's soccer program after an outstanding run in the NCAA tournament, where not only did they win in the semifinal against Pitt last Friday, they made it to the College Cup final, falling just short to Syracuse in penalty kicks. They fell to the Orange. The Orange win their first national title and carry North Carolina, beating Indiana in those PKs. But over the course of the 110 minutes that both teams played in the regulation period, as well as the overtimes, it was absolutely fantastic to watch. And it was absolutely a high level national championship worthy soccer match. Both teams were creating chances. Both teams were scoring goals. It was 2-2 going into the overtime period. It's just Syracuse converted that one extra penalty kick in order to hoist the trophy. The Hoosiers had a bit of a rough start. Interesting, right? See the parallel I'm trying to draw here. But as the year went on, they learned about their strengths, eliminated their weaknesses a little bit, and really went on that big run in the Big Ten tournament and then in the NCAA tournament. Maybe something that Mike Woodson can pay attention to a little bit. So Indiana men's soccer, yes, they did lose the national title game, but no question, that was the team that won the week this past week in IU Sports. Just an outstanding season for the Hoosiers and Todd Yeagley. They will look to win their 9th national title in program history next year. Folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, this part is important. Leave us a review. Tell a friend. Share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. So, Matt, before we get into Kansas here, let's zoom out, right? It's been 10 games. Indiana's 8-2. Okay, still very much a top 16 team. We've seen 3 of the 4 marquee non-conference games on this Indiana schedule get played. The Hoosiers dropped 2 of them. The Hoosiers, won 1 of them, and now they head into. The Hoosiers won 2 of those non-conference games, lost to Arizona, but also lost to Rutgers in this mix as well. Look, we had some thoughts in the preseason, right before things got going. Let's look at where we were right about this IU basketball team after 10 games and where we were wrong. So as you look back over the course of the last 10 games that took place, where were you right about this IU basketball team that does sit at 8-2?
I was right that Trace would be a National Player of the Year candidate. I was right that Indiana would be. I thought they would be like either 8-2 or 9-1 at this point. So I was right about that. I thought they would still be nationally ranked. I thought they would beat North Carolina, and yeah, that's about it. I didn't expect the freshmen to be so far along. I didn't expect Xavier Johnson to be playing the way he is. And honestly, I expected less from Miller Kopp. So again, some good things, some bad things, some very interesting things, some just, normal. This is IU basketball stuff. So again, I think it's fine. I think they're a really, really good team. I know Ant Wright still thinks they're the favorite to win the Big Ten. I'm not so certain about that, having watched them up close and personal. But again, they're one of the best teams in the not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. And they happen to have a bit of a bad game against Rutgers, and then they were in a close game, but ultimately lost by a reasonable margin to Arizona. But they beat a North Carolina team that was kind of hapless. But the Xavier win keeps looking much better and better as time goes on. So again, I want to see more from them against Kansas, but so far so good. I think from them, I think they're exceeding my expectations up until now. If you had to ask me.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's a really good point you made about the Xavier win too. I mean, there aren't that many programs. There are some for sure, but there aren't that many programs with a better true road win than Indiana going to Xavier and winning in that non-conference game. It's not the best by any means, but at this point, we're just 10 games in. There aren't too many programs out there that have a better true road win than Indiana does at
Right.
Xavier. I was right about Jalen Hood-Schifino. I think there were a lot of folks who came in and said, "Hey, is this point guard, is this guard combo guard really going to make that much of a difference when you got a team with Trace Jackson Davis and with Xavier Johnson with Race Thompson?" The answer is absolutely yes. What an absolute X factor he's been for this Indiana team. Almost even more than that. I don't that compliment can be a little bit backhanded. He is an all around force for Indiana when he is on the court. Of course, we definitely hope that the Hoosiers are able to get that back injury squared away as far as Hood-Schifino is concerned over the next few games. I also anticipated that Indiana, thanks to Hood-Schifino, would be a better three-point shooting team, and they are. Okay, Indiana isn't perfect from three-point land. Okay, not by any means, but the Hoosiers have definitely improved in that category here. And even when you look at how about that performance against Nebraska on Wednesday night, where they drained 11 of 25 beyond the arc, and you saw the Hoosiers use that three-pointer to their advantage, even against Arizona, where they were 10 of 25 from three. We did a podcast in the preseason where we talked about what exactly should the expectations be for Indiana from three-point land, and we looked at previous Final Four teams, and we said Indiana doesn't have to shoot 50% from three. Indiana just got to improve the overall output by a few percentage points.
Yep.
And they were at like 33 and change last year. They're up now. They've boosted it a little bit. We'll see where it settles. But at the end of the day, right, you just wanted to see an uptick in that three-point percentage. We can thank Miller Kopp for that. Xavier Johnson's off to a decent start. I believe before the Arizona game, 4 Hoosiers had a three-point percentage of up above 40%. That's exactly what you want to see here. You hope that can continue going forward. Matt, let's look at the other side of this, though. Okay, we weren't perfect. All right. Where were you wrong about this Indiana basketball team? Where did the Hoosiers surprise you, either positively or negatively?
I think I went a little bit into that when I was kind of rambling, but I think I was wrong about Miller Kopp. I thought his minutes would go down. If anything, I think his minutes are going to go up. I didn't think that Trey Galloway was going to take the jump that he has taken. As far as a perimeter player goes, I think he's a much better player now. as proved by the Nebraska game. He's still streaky. He's still a streaky shooter, right? He's
Yeah.
going to shoot a lot when he's hitting. He's not going to shoot it at all when he's not. But hey, it's better to hit it sometimes than not hit it ever, right? Or at all. So again, happy about that. I thought we would see more of Logan Duncombe. We haven't really seen more of Logan Duncombe, mostly because Malik Renew has been so good. That's fine. I was wrong about that. I didn't think Renew was going to get a ton of playing time this year. Clearly, he's going to get a decent amount of playing time. I always thought Jalen Hood-Schifino was going to be good, so I wasn't really wrong about that at all. Tamar Bates hasn't taken the jump that I thought he was going to take, but he's taken a jump. So I guess
Gradual. It's gradual.
yeah. I guess I'm not technically wrong about that, but um, I did think he was going to make his way into the starting lineup, but I guess that goes more hand in hand with I had less faith in Miller Kopp and more faith in Tamar Bates, and they both look good now, which is fine. So I'm actually looking forward to. I was thinking about this today. I was like,
Yeah.
I want to see more sets with Tamar at the 3 and Miller at the 4.
Play small ball a little bit.
A little bit of small ball. You play Trace at the 5 or Renew at the 5, whoever you want. And so that those guys have infinite floor spacing because now you have Tamar and Miller who you can run outside shots for. You have the two guards and Jalen Hood-Schifino and Avery Johnson who are both reliable from 3. And then you have Trace or Renew or Race or whoever you want down low, and it makes teams. It's a nightmare to guard for teams. The floor spacing in that lineup is crazy. So again, like it's nice that we can have these conversations because in years past that hasn't been the case where I'm talking like, well, maybe with this lineup we can get good floor spacing. It's like, well, no matter what lineup we throw out there, we're not getting good floor spacing. So again, I'm very excited to kind of see how the season unfolds. I was right on some things, wrong on some things. You're never going to be 100% correct, folks. All right, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you were talking about a little bit of small ball perhaps for Indiana. That could come as soon as Saturday, folks. Kansas doesn't really have an Umar Ballo type force in the middle. And so you could potentially see Indiana resort to some of that against the Jayhawks on Saturday. Just real quick update on the 3-point shooting. Indiana was at 33.3% last year. They are up to 36.4% this year. So overall, you see that percentage point increase there as the Hoosiers hopefully can improve on that mark. It's possible given the quality of shots that they're getting. I was wrong about Jordan Geronimo. I thought coming out of the Wyoming and St. Mary's games from the NCAA tournament last year, I thought he would be a Hoosier that really made a splash early in the season. We haven't quite seen that yet, and I'm not ruling it out that he really steps up and delivers for Indiana at various points this year. It's not impossible by any means, but Jordan Geronimo just has not established himself really in this rotation. I think the coaches are still trying to figure out the perfect role for him on this team. We'll see how that tracks over the course of the rest of the season. And then I also didn't think Malik Reneau was going to be this good. I really didn't.
Yeah, no, I didn't
This
either.
is remember Malik Reneau came into this program in what was it? I think in March or April of 2022. And while I knew he would have some camaraderie with Jalen Hood-Schifino going back to Montverde, and I had an idea that he would I don't know, give Indiana some minutes. I thought there was also a possibility that he would be out of the rotation with Trace Jackson Davis, Race Thompson, and Jordan Geronimo all on the depth chart. And he's blown that notion way out of the water. Mike Woodson just said earlier this week, even if Renew picks up 2 fouls in the first half going forward, he's going to keep him in the game. That's going to be his strategy going forward. Mike Woodson wants to get Malik Renew more playing time. And I was way off on that. The last thing I thought, there were multiple times in our Slack chat where I wanted to see CJ Gunn over Miller Kopp on a consistent basis. I wanted to supplant Miller Kopp with CJ Gunn, and over the last 3 games, Miller Kopp has totally proven me wrong. Again, double digits each of the last 3 weeks. That 3-point percentage of his hovering near 50. So Miller Kopp has been an absolutely wonderful development for the Hoosiers this year. And I forgot who said this. It may have been Tom Crean with Jordan Hulls, or it may have been another coach. You don't really want to see 3-point percentages hovering near 50 because that means they're not shooting enough, right? You want to see Miller Kopp eventually. If he has to take 10 threes a game and hits 40%, you're a pretty high-powered offense. So we'll see how that goes. for Indiana over the course of the next handful of weeks, especially into Big Ten play. How much of a part will Miller Kopp be to this IU offense? All right, folks, it's high time. I know you're waiting for this. Indiana, Kansas on Saturday at noon. It's an ESPN2 broadcast coming to you from Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence. What an atmosphere it's going to be. Indiana's had their fair share of excellent crowds in the early part of the season thus far. And in the Big Ten, it's going to be just as good, if not better. The Jayhawks are number 7 in the KenPom ratings, 8th in the AP poll. They are 9-1 on the season with a neutral site loss to Tennessee. They have a neutral win over Duke, neutral win over Wisconsin in overtime, neutral win over NC State. Big wins recently over Seton Hall and Mizzou as well. The Jayhawks are the real deal. They're in this mix of teams that could cut down the nets, just like they did last year after beating North Carolina in the national championship game. Indiana and Kansas are both fully rested ahead of this Saturday matchup. Both teams will have about a week off before they play each other coming up on Saturday the 17th. Matt, this Kansas team is coached by Bill Self. They play 7 to 9 guys: Jalen Wilson, DeJuan Harris, Grady Dick, some of the key names. What are one or two things you're looking to see out of Indiana in this heavyweight bout against Kansas on Saturday?
Guard play. Again, I think the one really standout strength that Kansas has is they got good guards and wings, to be honest. But they're just really good on the perimeter, is what I should say. On the perimeter, they're a really, really good team. Now they don't play through the post. You're not gonna see a lot of post ups from them. They run a ton of screens and try to get guys in motion, going to their strong hand to get shots. For instance, Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick, both those guys are gonna be running around trying to shoot threes. DeJuan Harris and Kevin McCullough are gonna guard the heck out of you. Yusufu's gonna come off the bench and offer you some energy and basically like a mini version of all of them. Right. And so again, these guys are really, really good, but they're really, really small. Like really small. Like KJ Adams Jr., I believe, is last time I checked, he's 6'7". And that's really they have to play. That's the biggest guy they really play. Jalen Wilson's not a really big post defender, even though he's 6'8". So again, Indiana should eat inside the post. They're probably going to get crowded a lot, just like Rutgers, where they're going to throw guys and numbers at them, and the guys are in the perimeter are going to have to hit shots. I'm going to be interested to see how Indiana's defense handles Grady Dick as a guy who's going to run around for hours trying to get open for a three. Again, there was a lot of communication issues in the Arizona game. People not switching, leaving people open for three. Arizona made you pay. And this is a more hostile environment than, a 90% neutral court environment in favor of IU.
Exactly.
So again, communication is key. Game planning is key. So I'm interested to see how the Hoosiers do with that. But again, if this game is going to be won, it's going to be won because Trace Jackson Davis is going to be the best player on the floor. Jalen Wilson is a very, very good player himself. So it's going to be the battle between who can carry their team more. Can Jalen Wilson do it, or can Trace do it? I do think Indiana has a chance if Jalen Hood-Schifino's back. I don't think they really have a chance if Jalen Hood-Schifino's back.
And
that's my outlook for this game.
And I know they don't have a chance if Jalen Hood-Schifino's out and Xavier Johnson picks up 2 fouls in the first 8 minutes, right? That's especially when you know that they don't have a chance.
I mean, there's just no room for Xavier Johnson to mess up when he doesn't have a running mate, right?
Just doesn't. Although, shout out to Xavier Johnson. It was +4 for Indiana on Saturday, which once again does highlight. Again, we can argue about plus minus all day, but at the end of the day, Indiana outscored Arizona when Xavier Johnson was on the floor. Stay on the floor.
I mean, it's amazing. Indiana outscored their opponent when they had a point guard on the floor.
Breaking news, right? A good
one,
right? Xavier Johnson's a good basketball player. I want to see him on the court, not on the sideline. Shocker. But Matt, you really highlighted all the keys there. I mean, Jalen Wilson is an outstanding player to watch. I mean, you talk about 6'8" player who can really do everything on the basketball court. He takes 6 threes a game. He grabs 9.5 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists per game, 22 points
He's
per
not a
game,
post player though. You
34
got to
minutes.
understand this. He's
No,
not.
exactly,
He's
exactly.
a three, right?
He's a three. He's a stretch four. It's really a three. He's really a three. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the defensive assignment for Indiana on Jalen Wilson will be fascinating to watch. I mean, if I put you right on the spot, Matt, who's
Race
your
Thompson.
first choice? Who's your first choice to guard Jalen Wilson for Indiana? I don't know who the answer is, frankly, off the top of my head.
Race Thompson. It's Race Thompson. It's
And
clearly Race Thompson. He's the most athletic guy that we
how do you
have.
feel about that, Matt?
I feel fine,
Okay.
actually.
All right.
I
Okay.
feel okay with that. I think Jordan Geronimo can probably give you really good minutes in this
I like
game.
that actually. Yeah.
I think Trey Galloway could defend him very well. I think that Indiana has a couple guys that can defend him well, who I don't think can defend him very well. Tamar Bates, this is not
Miller
your
Kopp.
game to defend him. Miller Kopp, this is not your game to defend him. He's too athletic, too mobile for those guys. He causes too many issues for a guy like Tamar, right? Where he's gonna get frantic. He's not gonna know what to do. As a guy that looks a little bit panicked on defense, and then for Miller, he's just physically unable to guard somebody like him. So again, I'd much rather see those guys, more focused on Grady Dick and more focused on the rest of
Yeah.
Kansas's guards. But Kansas is going to score from the garbage guys. Newsflash, they're going to score from the outside. Indiana needs to match them somehow. It doesn't have to be through outside shots. It can be from inside playing through the post. But you need your best player to show up in these big games. And so far, Trace has shown that he's not really reliable. So this is my challenge to Trace.
Well, because we saw him excel in those Big Ten tournament games. We saw him excel against Wyoming in the NCAA freaking tournament. I want to see him make a stamp on this match. This is why he came back, right?
Yes, and I want him to show people that the reason he didn't play well on Saturday is because Omar Ballo is a matchup problem. Sure. And that's it. I want that to be the reason. Not that Trace, doesn't show up for games, not that Indiana is soft, none of this, right?
He's done it.
He's done it before. Show that you can do it again. That's all I'm asking.
Can't wait. Really looking forward to seeing Trace Jackson Davis's impact on Saturday afternoon. We're going to dive even further, talk to you about one or two Hoosiers we're looking to step up and give you a prediction in just a second. But first, let's take a break for our social media shout out. There was a lot going on social media over the last few days, especially with the World Cup going on at the same time as the NFL and the NBA and college basketball and the Heisman Trophy and all sorts of stuff. Let's shout out some Hoosiers who made a big difference in the pros over the course of the last few days. We saw Nick Westbrook-Akina score another touchdown for Tennessee in the corner of the end zone for the Titans.
Keep scoring.
So reliable, such a valuable asset to that Titans team. Exactly the kind of player I think Tom Allen's trying to find in the transfer portal right now to help the Hoosiers get back to some sort of winning ways this upcoming season. Ryder Anderson, he was at Indiana for just a year, the transfer from Ole Miss. Ryder Anderson had a number of big moments for IU in that 2021 season, especially in that game against Cincinnati and Bloomington. But, of course, as the 21 season went on, not too many pass rush opportunities for the Hoosiers. So he's on the Giants. He's worked his tail off during the preseason, got on the practice squad, promoted to the active roster, and he got a sack of Jalen Hurts on Sunday afternoon. The Eagles ended up winning.
Oh, but he lost. Oh, God.
Hey, Ryder Anderson, player of the game for the Giants, if you ask me. That's what I say. If the Giants had to vote someone to get a game ball there. And we also saw Victor Oladipo. He returned to Indianapolis. Great to see Victor back in the state. That really helped him rise to prominence in his college basketball career. For you youngsters that don't know who Victor Oladipo is, definitely hit up the YouTubes. The only reason I say that is because if you didn't see, in partnership with the NCAA March Madness account tweeted out Christian Watford going around Bloomington, asking fans if they were called the watch shot and knew what happened then. And a bunch of students on campus didn't know what it was. That's fine. Look, we're not judging here. All we're saying is if you don't know about Christian Watford or Victor Oladipo, hit up the YouTube machine. It's there. It is your friend. That's what you can do in your spare time when you're not studying for finals like good old Charlie is. Folks, as we go before we get into the Kansas game, a quick shout out of our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. Join the crew. I think over 7,000 followers on Twitter. I think over almost 5,000 on Facebook. We're crossed the 1,000 follower mark on Instagram. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
And that's where you can find us and join the masses.
Can we record that so I don't have to do that every single pod, just as a sound bite?
Make sure you're locked in. It's the shtick. It's the shtick. Okay, look, overall, that's where you can find us. We're your one-stop shop for IU sports, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, undefeated, continues to sit in the top 4 of the sport there. Men's soccer, we were pumping out recap articles as Indiana's in the College Cup. If you need to know it, we'll keep you in the loop here on Indiana HQ. Matt, look, his 7 to 9 man rotation for the Jayhawks. Talked about Jalen Wilson, talked about Grady Dick, a few other players, guys. Kevin McCullough transferred in from Texas Tech. He's a defensive focused guard who's going to cause problems for Xavier Johnson, Tamara Bates, Miller Kopp. Is Jalen Hitchafino going to come back? Kevin McCullough is going to get that matchup. KJ Adams is a bit of a problematic matchup for the Hoosiers as well. He's someone who can do a few different things. As far as I'm concerned, the Hoosier I'm looking to step up here, and I talked about it a moment ago. I am really digging deep here. Jordan Geronimo and Malik Renew are 2 guys I'm looking to see really step up in this game. And I know it ain't sexy necessarily, but you're talking about a couple of guys with long wingspans, talking about a couple of guys who are able to get some deflections if they're not able to rebound the ball, keep the Jayhawks off the boards, push the ball up the court, let's go, try to steal some points on fast breaks. That's the kind of effort I'm looking to see out of Jordan Geronimo and Malik Renew. And remember, you come off a couple of games where maybe they haven't made the biggest impact. Mike Whitson's tabbed Renew to take a step forward here, get some more playing time. I want to see Jordan Geronimo and Malik Renew. Of course, I would just love if Miller Kopp and Tamara Bates swish a few more threes in Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday at noon, 11 a.m. Central, Saturday morning tip in Kansas for those of you keeping track at home. As far as you're concerned, Matt, 1 or 2 Hoosiers you're looking to step up and make a difference for Indiana against the Jayhawks.
Trace and Race.
Let's go.
I think they need to be the best players for not only for Indiana, but they need the best players in the court. Especially with the matchups they have, they should be able to exploit them. Like, for instance, I know they won't be in. I'm going to say this now: they won't be in foul trouble. But Kansas, at the end of the day, should have to hack Trace and Race to get the ball back. Right? They should have to literally foul them and send them to the line in order for them to guard this team. Right? That's how good IU should be through the post. They haven't been that way all year, mostly because the officials haven't really been calling it IU's way.
Not yet, but, right? One day.
Not yet, but, odds are in our favor that they will eventually start calling it for IU. So, again, just play through them as much as possible. But, again, if they overhelp, the perimeter guys need to be prepared, right? Miller Kopp needs to be prepared to hit shots. Tamar Bates needs to be prepared to hit shots. Trey Galloway needs to be prepared to shoot the ball. Right? These guys, it's very important for this team that they do that. So again, I'm excited to kind of see this team. I'll give my prediction right now. I don't think IU wins this game. I think they lose this game in a close one. I think like 75-73 final from Allen, but it'll be a good game that people will be like, okay, Indiana's for real.
Even if Indiana loses by 30, I still think they're for real. Ken Palm, by the way, does have this game 73-68 in favor of the Jayhawks. It's Indiana's second toughest game remaining on the schedule outside of a road trip to Purdue at the end of the regular season. It's kind of fascinating. If you look at the numbers, Indiana and Kansas are fairly identical in every aspect. It's crazy.
But they attack you in different ways, which is hilarious.
Which is interesting how you think of it. Pace, about the same. The number of threes the teams take, about the same. The percentage, Indiana's 36.4% from 3. Kansas is 36.7 from 3. Free throw percentage, not much of a difference. Indiana slightly better. Rebounding, not much of a difference. Kansas, slightly better. Indiana forces turnovers 18% of the time. Kansas forces turnovers 19% of the time. Indiana turns it over 14% of the time. Kansas turns it over 15% of the time. I mean, the difference is that this game is being played in Kansas, right? Home court advantage. That'll help the Jayhawks just a little bit. And we'll see about the availability of Jalen Hood-Schifino. I'm going to say that Indiana finds a way here to win on Saturday. I think it's going to be an outstanding college basketball game. I just wonder if maybe with a little bit of an earlier start, Indiana focuses on getting out to a lead in the beginning. Perhaps the crowd is just a little bit flat at 11 a.m. local time. Let's see Indiana get out to a 15-8 lead, play from ahead, and see how that helps them. They lost at Rutgers. They lost in the neutral site to Arizona. I think Indiana finds a way to get a true road win, the second one in their non-conference slate.
And I like what you're thinking.
And then I'm banking a little bit on what I've seen from Miller Kopp from the perimeter. Keep that rhythm going, and of course, if Jalen Hood-Schifino is available, that'll be a very valuable development for the Indiana Hoosiers. So, Matt, as we wind down here on this Wednesday night, a lot to discuss with the IU basketball program. It's a top 16 team, right? Look, it's okay. Indiana's going to lose a couple games. It's the whole point of scheduling a tough non-conference schedule. And, of course, you had that tough road game against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. What are your final thoughts here as we close up shop 11 days before Christmas?
Look, IU actually put up a decent fight in that game. Shorthanded, it's fine. Arizona's probably one of the 4 best teams in the country, and I can't wait to see them play each other in the Final Four. But
Okay.
yeah, so Indiana's got a lot to do, a lot to work on though, and that's very obvious. I think to the staff and the players, and yeah. Last thing I'll say, it was nice to see a traveling Hoosier crowd again.
Yeah.
They were out in force in Vegas, so props to the rest of you guys for making that. Yeah, congratulations, you guys got a free vacation. Good job.
Yeah, congrats to folks to cobble to really pick themselves up by the bootstraps and go to Vegas. Yeah, real admirable effort. Of course, we had talked about on last week's podcast the number of Hoosier fans that made their way to Rutgers to watch IU play Rutgers. Of course, the New York City alumni base there doing their job. So shout out to IU fans definitely doing their job. Can't wait to see the number of crimson and cream shirts in attendance. As Matt mentioned, fans really love wearing their IU stuff no matter the venue or the occasion. My final thoughts. Look, guys, Indiana, Kansas is one of about 15 unreal, incredible, amazing college basketball games on Saturday. This is a bit of a right turn from what we've talked about to this point. But on Saturday, Indiana, Kansas is on the slate with Tennessee, Arizona, Houston, Virginia, Alabama, Gonzaga, UCLA, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio State, UConn, Butler in a conference matchup, Texas A&M, Memphis. I mean, let's go. Where else would you rather be, folks? And guess what? Half of those teams are going to lose games. And you know what? That's part of life when you play tough teams in the non-conference. But this is exactly what Indiana signed up to do. Thankfully, the Crossroads Classic no longer exists. That about wraps it up for our 276th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.